these days. Got a kiddo too at home. Pretty good looking kiddo. Colby Daniels, how's parenting going?
Robert, it's fantastic, man. It's good to hear your voice. Yeah, parenting has been quite the adventure. It's a whole different ball game when you're at home with the little person all day long, and there's no daycare obviously for a long period of time, and I'm home anyway, and I'm able to do the podcast from the house. So yeah, it's wild. I have to strategically plan television time to distract him so I can do things like this.
Exactly. I went through some of that because when Zach was little, uh, I balanced Channel 4 where I didn't go in till 1 o'clock most days. So my wife would work at her office in the morning, and I would do the those kind of things. And then when I went in, she'd come in, or I would drop him off at just a couple of hours of daycare. So I kind of know what you're going through, but you know what? It's fun. I mean, most days. There's some days that are rough, but I would think most days are fun.
Oh, it's a blast, especially
Okay.
since the weather has been nice. The first part of everybody going into quarantine, the weather was terrible. It was rainy and cold, and we couldn't really go outside. And so I think there was a lot of cabin fever on both of our parts. But as the weather got nice and we, kind of got into the spring and summer months, we've spent so much time outside and watching. He's almost 4, Robert, which is incredible. He's going to have his
Yeah.
driver's license, I think, next week. But he's grown up so much in the past 6 months and taken such giant steps forward in terms of growing up. It's wild to watch, that close and being home for all of it.
Yeah, and can you tell you can usually tell around 4 whether they're going to be a sports fan or a sports nut or not. Is that inherited?
He's more interested in riding his bike and playing with his
Okay.
cars and just digging holes in the mud and things like that. He hasn't. I've tried the football stuff, and he's got a little basketball goal in the backyard, and we've tried the t-ball stuff, and he'll stick with it for a few minutes, and then he's distracted to something else. So it's
Okay.
undecided, and he hasn't even picked which hand he actually throws with. Every time he throws a ball, it's with a different hand. So we haven't even figured out
Ooh.
for sure if he's right or left-handed. Maybe it's both, and we're able to, parlay that into some sort of like pitching from the right side and the left side.
Ooh, yeah. I mean, keep that left going as long as you possibly can.
No
We got
doubt.
it's funny. Zach, my son got excited because for a long time, Cash was picking up the fork, which is key, and was picking up everything with the left hand and was throwing left-handed, and then settled on the right side. And I remember the depression. Zach's like, he's a right-hander, bummer, because we were thinking the baseball part of it. That's where that left-handed stuff comes in handy on is in baseball. All right, tell people what you're doing now
Yeah,
besides
I've got
parenting.
a media company going, and I've started 2 podcasts. The first one I started about a month after I was laid off from Tyler Media earlier this spring, and that one is called the Shot You Take podcast, and I paired up with a good friend of mine out of Tulsa. He used to be the sports director at the I hope I don't get this wrong. I think it's the ABC affiliate in Tulsa, John Moss. So he and I do a podcast together, and we tape that twice a week, and we've got some other big things coming up that I can't really talk about yet that are kind of in the works for that podcast. But yeah, that one's going along. I think we're in the 40 something episodes finished, and the response has been pretty amazing. And then a few weeks ago, I got to the point where I had so many off days from the Shots You Take podcast that I needed something to fill my time. So I started the Colby Daniels podcast. I think I've done 12 episodes of that podcast so far, and that one's just me and random guests and just talking about it's sports based, but I mean talking about all kinds of different things and different angles, and just kind of having a good time with it. So it allows me to kind of stay in the broadcasting world while also being at home and taking care of the little dude. So it's been a ton of fun. I love the format.
In this state, obviously we're so college sports dominated. And I'll be honest, the last last week or two, I have been doing everything I could. Every once in a while, you pick out a story that you want to break. You want to be on top of that, and mine has been the Oklahoma State opening game. Since Oregon State and the Pac-12, came out with conference only, and Oregon State ditched on OSU, and Chad Weiberg, it's a challenge because Chad Weiberg, the deputy AD at Oklahoma State, is a guy that covers his tracks well. He's close to the vest. It's hard to sometimes figure out what Chad's doing. He makes it that way, which is good. That's his job as an administrator. So I just decided that was going to be, I'm going to do everything I can to break that story. I want to be on top of that. And come to find out now, with everything that's going on, the ACC's announcement yesterday, we're going to hear from the SEC today. And now my sources tell me that the Big 12 is either going to play a 9-game conference schedule only or a 9+1, which means that opener becomes a moot point for Oklahoma State. So I've been working on something that probably isn't going to end up happening anyway. But long question for a short finish. What do you think about the ACC, and what do you think about college football the way it looks like we might see it if we hopefully get to see it?
This is kind of what I expected. I kind of felt like we were going to see college football in some capacity, but I was almost at the point where I felt like there was no chance we were going to see college football as we know it. There were going to have to be, changes made to schedules, and we were going to have to do things in a different way. And a lot of that has to do with the geography of the country and the conferences, and, where I think cases are worse in some places than others. So everybody is kind of, you can't just put everybody under the same umbrella and say, this is how we're going to do things, because again, it's, everywhere is experiencing these things in a different way. So you also have, people that you have to listen to that are bigger than just head football coaches, like what city you live in, what state you live in. There are laws and things being put in place that, impact schools' decisions. So I felt like we were going to see each conference kind of decide how they wanted to handle it. And I always felt like if the ACC, for example, said, we don't feel like it's safe to play a college football season, I didn't think that was going to impact the Big 12 from potentially saying, well, I'm sorry that you can't play. We feel comfortable enough to play, and we have extremely low positive tests, so we're gonna go forward. So I think the idea that everybody has to play under the same umbrella and play by the same set of rules is a little bit far-fetched. I don't know if we end up seeing any sort of bowl scenario or any sort of college football playoff scenario. This might be a season where you just get conference champions, and that's the very end of it, and we don't have anything beyond that. But the idea of scrapping an entire season and everybody losing out on the revenue that is generated from college football just because we can't govern everybody by the same rules, and we can't govern everybody in the right way to get a bowl schedule and get a college football playoff game is crazy to me. The world's a different place right now, and I think you just get the college football games in that you can get in. And if things get bad and you have to shut down, so be it. But if you feel like at the time that it's ready to kick off, things are okay. Fit as much in as you can, make some money while you can. Everybody's hurting financially currently in this entire economy. So I'm all for it. I love the fact that they're doing what they can to get football on the field. And I think as far as college football fans go, is anybody really going to be disappointed if we only get 8 games as opposed to potentially canceling a season?
No, and I think the way you described it, I think college football will copy Major League Baseball. I mean, that's exactly what the way you described that sounds exactly what Major League Baseball is doing. Okay, Marlins, y'all went out and partied. Y'all had a bunch of positives. Guess what? You don't get to play till next week. And you better bring up a bunch of minor leaguers to play because the big boys, you're in quarantine, okay? Don't forget it. I think that's what I agree with you. That's what we're dealing with. And are we going to see some college football team or multiple college football teams along the way get tripped up by a campus party? I just talked about it. That's what they're saying, the Rutgers deal, where they're shut down from working out. It's a party. Parties are the enemy right now. That is the enemy.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, nobody loves a good party more than I do, and I would love to be in the middle of one right now with all my buddies having a good time. But I think more than anything, and look, I know people want to politicize this whole discussion in terms of COVID and whether it's good or bad or it's dangerous or it's not dangerous and all that. Like all of that aside, the bottom line is the people that are making decisions are making it based on whether people are testing positive or negative, and whether it's spreading within the group of people that they're governing. So if you just evaluate it from that standpoint and understand that that's the way they're making their decisions, then do what you can to keep that from being the case, from giving them an opportunity to shut you down, and try to make it happen. I mean, it's again, I know that everybody has different beliefs on this whole COVID thing and what the right way is to handle it, but we understand at least the way that it's being handled, and when you have that information, you can act accordingly if you want college football to happen. So just do it.
Yeah, it is funny, and maybe it's not just Sam. Maybe you bring out some of this in me too when I get on with you. But the thing I want to say right now, because some of my audience wants to try and pin me down on politics, and of course in Stillwater, all summer long, we've had a lot of it with regards to the whole situation over with Oklahoma State football. But let me say
Sure.
this, and I'm sure you've had people that have said this to you, and as much as I know it's not true, I really wish it would be true. But how many people have come up to you at some point in time and said, well, this whole coronavirus COVID-19 thing is going to be over after the election? I've had so many people say that, and I'm like,
Oh yeah, for sure.
really? And I'm like, I hope you're right. I hope that this is the political disease and that after a certain election is done, it's going to disappear or we're going to have a vaccine immediately. I would love if that happened because at least now I have a timetable on how long this damn thing's going to last. But I refuse. I tell you what, I refuse to believe that a disease like this is purely political. I think there is some science and there's some treachery to it. So I don't think it's political.
Yeah, I don't know what to believe. I mean, I think that there are people that make great points on both sides of the argument, and there are people way smarter than me that can make that decision. I try to look at this from a practical standpoint, and I try to look at this from a what do we have to do to get life back to normal? What do we have to do to make sure that college football happens? And if we have a bunch of positive tests, college football is not happening. So, if that requires social distancing and that requires mask wearing, even if, a lot of those positive cases aren't killing people, I'm at least willing to do whatever I have to do my part to make sure that college football happens, to make sure that we have sports. I mean, my life is drastically different, Robert, when we're not having sports, not just from a financial standpoint, but I mean, it's what I love to do.
Yeah.
It's that scene from Talladega Nights where Will Ferrell's like, I don't know what to do with my hands. That's kind of how I felt the last few months. Like we haven't had sports, and it's just been kind of a weird thing to try and navigate.
No, I'm with you. And again, it's crazy. Some of the things that I've had to try and research recently, I've never thought in my mind I would ever have to research because you cover sports, but now you're having to research epidemiology and protocols regarding health safety and all that stuff. It is vastly different. Colby Daniels with us, and let's talk. Let's get to the sports part of this. Let's talk some NFL because this is of all the things that have happened in this, and maybe I'm just short sighted. The thing that maybe amazes me the most about what's happened in the sports world is there are not going to be any NFL preseason games. I never thought I would live to see because for the NFL that's cheap labor. The players are not getting paid their regular salaries, and you play with a bunch of rookies and rookie free agents, and you still charge the same ticket price. That's a dream for NFL owners, And the owners have given up the preseason. We will not have an NFL preseason game this year.
It's kind of shocking, isn't it, just from a financial standpoint that they went that route. And this is, I think, where the players are kind of realizing as time goes on how much power they have. And if we were going to see any sort of regular season, I think that's what the owners had to give in on. The NFL was never going to not do everything in their power to make this work. They're like a giant tank that has put the thing in forward gear and then broken it off and disabled the brakes, and it is just going to truck through until it actually comes to a stop by powers, out of their control. I genuinely believe that about the NFL. And so I think that they were going to do whatever they could to just get the players on board so that they're able to kick the season off. If that meant no preseason games, so be it. I know it's a hit to them financially. The players, for as much as it's funny to me, for as much as they don't like playing preseason games, most of the big names don't play those games anyway. So it's funny to me that it's such a sticking point for them.
Yeah, exactly. And here's what it costs. One of my favorite things to follow is the college guys I've seen play, whether at Oklahoma State or somebody Oklahoma State played, that are rookie free agents. Blake Jarwin. Blake Jarwin wouldn't have made he would not have made the Dallas Cowboys without preseason games. He'd have been cut, and so that's what we're going to see this year. Now, that may be the value in this for NFL veterans, especially the marginal NFL veterans, is they're not going to discover somebody that can take their job because there won't be those preseason games to discover those guys. So that's kind of where I see the value in that for the veterans. It just struck me the last time I think we saw each other face to face. I think we were in Big 12 Media Days. The virtual variety is coming up on Monday. I think we were in Arlington and we were watching Major League Baseball in that area over there by by the new stadium, new ballpark in Arlington or Globe Life Park.
Oh, Texas Live, yeah.
Yeah, Texas Live, and yeah, that was a fun time. We ordered a bunch of food. We were all drinking a few drinks, and everybody was happy that night. Have you?
That was a lifetime ago, Robert. The world was a completely different place.
I'm aware of that. There wasn't a mask in sight. Anyway, I assume you've watched a lot of baseball since it's back.
I have, yeah.
So yeah, me too. And my Cubs are off to a pretty good start. They laid an egg last night, and I'm still cussing Hugh Darvish. I think I cussed Hugh Darvish that night when we were together last. But I still, I wish Hugh Darvish was anywhere but Chicago.
That was a guy when the Rangers traded him. I was so sad to see him go because he had been there for such a long period of time. He had been, the guy that carried that pitching staff for years and years. But it was time. He was coming up on a contract, and you could tell that he was very, very close to falling off that ledge and beginning that downhill slide in a quick way. And obviously he gets to Chicago. I think he went to the Dodgers first. But it seemed to happen pretty quick. He literally went from like an all-star caliber pitcher to a guy that you're really worried about getting shelled every time he takes the mound.
Yeah. So, but what have you thought so far? I know I made fun of the Marlins going out and partying, and now they're in shutdown. But I think the baseball itself has been pretty good.
Yeah, I've loved it. It's been live sports, so that's a big plus. I know we've had NASCAR and like soccer has started before, the NBA and MLB are getting started this week. But for me, the baseball, basketball, football, those are the big things I follow. MMA, it's so great to have it back. For the most part, I would say from Thursday night through Sunday, if I was awake, I had a game on. I may not have been paying 100% attention to it at all times just because I've had other things to do, but there has been some sort of live athletic event on a television screen in my house, basically from sun up to sundown over the last 5 or 6 days, and it's been glorious.
Yeah, for the first time this weekend, I guess starting Saturday at I think it's 2:30, we'll have a fight over the TV because I'm not a big NBA guy and not into the Thunder like everybody, but my wife is because the Thunder all come to their office for their dental. That's the official dentist. So she already told me, she goes, I don't care what you're doing, but Saturday afternoon I'm watching Utah and the Thunder on this TV. I'm like, okay, I'll find somewhere else to be. If I want to watch baseball or horse racing or whatever else is on, I'll find another TV. We have several in the house.
Isn't it crazy to you that without the fans being there, Major League Baseball still hasn't figured out a way to capitalize on having all these games? Basically, I mean, they could potentially air baseball games all day, every day, from sun up to sundown. And once again, they just seem like they missed the boat on that. The NBA is going to do that. The NBA is basically going to be like March Madness in the bubble.
Yeah.
They're constantly going to have games running. There's constantly going to have, you're going to have that product available to you as the consumer. And it blows me away that once again, Major League Baseball can't seem to get out of their own way. And they even still have their blackout restrictions, I'm told, with, their like MLB packages.
They do. And they're still getting my money on the MLB package. So I don't know if that's worth
Isn't
more
that
to
mind blowing?
them. Well, I mean, I don't know if that's worth more to them or having games across the board where they could be getting all kinds of rights fees from, because there's other networks. I mean, in their partnership, they're on Fox and ESPN as well as their own MLB network. You would think and Fox has not only they have FS1, FS2, ESPN has all their platforms. You would think they could do that. Of course, here's the deal. We're coming up. How about this? We're coming up this month. Now, it looks like Labor Day weekend, we won't have college football. I think college football, everybody's going to be pushed back to September 12th. But Labor Day weekend, you're going to have baseball. You'll have NBA. You won't have the NFL yet. That'll still be a week off. But you're going to have the Kentucky Derby. You got the Masters coming up here later on in the fall, the Preakness. And then you're going to have NFL, uh, college football. Uh, you'll still have Major League Baseball now that they've added teams to the playoffs. That'll go deeper. I don't know. When is the NBA bubble? When will they crown the NBA champion?
I believe the NBA Finals is supposed to be played in October. And
Okay.
the draft is like a week after that, and then I think free agency is like a week after that. So it's like a month. It's like a month or so turnaround from the finals ending to players getting reporting to camp to start the new season.
Late September and October, we're going to need more channels than we got right now. Who would have ever thought you'd say, well, ESPN needs to debut the Ocho because they've now got legitimate. It ain't dodgeball. They can put more than dodgeball on the Ocho now.
Yeah,
Crazy.
I'm with you. I really hope that if college football and all these conferences decide to either eliminate completely non-conference games or go to the +1 type scenario that the Big 12 is talking about, that they still start close to the original starting time. Because again, I don't understand the point in delaying it. If you get rid of non-conference games to begin the season, I don't understand the point in starting 3 weeks later than you normally would. Just move up the conference schedule to the beginning date and try and get things in while you can. I mean, again, you have no idea how this thing is going to change and what's going to occur. There's all these conversations about the warm months versus the cold months and how that could potentially impact the spread of this thing. If we feel comfortable enough at the end of next month to play football, move the conference games up and let's kick off. Let's get as much in as we can, and hopefully we get the whole thing in. But none of us have any idea how this thing is going to change, and just what the overall, I think, public opinion of this being active will be. So get it going. That's my opinion.
Yeah, I think it's starting to look like September 12th will be. So the college football and NFL regular season will kick off on the same weekend. At least that's the way it looks like. Hey, Colby, I appreciate it again. Tell folks where they can find your podcasts.
You can find it most places that podcasts are available: Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Play, Stitcher, TuneIn. I think there are some others, but if it's not somewhere that you can find it, let me know at Colby_Daniels on Twitter, and I'll do whatever I can to get it on your preferred platform. But I think it's on most of the platforms that people use to listen to podcasts. So check it out, the Colby Daniels podcast and the Shot You Take podcast. I did want to say, Robert, I miss you guys as a Triple Play alum. I miss our conversations in the back office area of the Triple Play building, and obviously TD's jukebox, and just, we all used to have a really good time, and I miss you guys.
Yeah, I miss talking to you too, and that's why I reached out. And again, we'll do it again sometime, but I appreciate it.
For sure, buddy. Take care.
All right, Colby Daniels. We need to take